Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to showcase my Fireburst Elementalist. And yes, you heard me right, Fireburst is back on the menu thanks to Forbidden Sanctum and thanks to the new tattoos. So basically, Fireburst, for those who don't know, I'm not sure if it got released in the Ultimatum League. It definitely was a meta build in Ultimatum League because it had very high base damage, very high damage effectiveness, only a 1 second cooldown that you could get down to like 0.5 or something, and it was like one of the best Autobomber builds in the game. Then after a bunch of like nerfs over the past leagues, increasing the cooldown, decreasing the damage effectiveness, and also decreasing the base damage of it, it kind of got forgotten. But since we have now the Trial of the Ancestors and we have 2 more ways of getting the cooldown low enough, I decided to make a new take on the Fireburst Elementalist, which is this version over here. Just a quick TLDR, the 2 ways how we're gonna get enough damage on our Fireburst is in one hand going through minion damage with Spiritual Aid, so we're stacking here minion damage, which is then counted towards us, as well as stacking Abyss Jewels with just a bunch of flat damage, which works for Fireburst. On the CDR side, I got my CDR now when I cast Temporal Chains down to, 0.7 seconds. And the way Fireburst works is, doesn't matter what kind of hit you are doing to the enemy, might be an auto attack, can be Stonebrand, can be like Herald of Thunder, Cyclone, it does not matter which skill, as soon as you hit the enemy, the Fireburst goes off with a certain cooldown. And this inflicts the Ignite thanks to our Shaper of Flame, so we don't have to go crit, and we can use all forms of damage because all of our damage can ignite and hits always ignite. So we can stack lightning damage, cold damage, chaos damage, fizz damage, it does not matter. Just get as much physical damage, or at least as much damage to spells as possible, while trying to lower the cooldown as much as possible. So the base cooldown of the skill is 1.5 seconds, and this feels kinda bad. Reason for that is, if you have it like for bossing, it doesn't really matter, but for mapping, if there is a bunch of monsters, you run in and you explode them, but not all the monsters die, then you have like a 1.5 seconds cooldown, you run into the next pack, and you just wait for your Fireburst to go off, because all the other skills, what you're using, like Herald of Thunder and stuff, are not dealing damage. So how can we do this? First of all, there is CDR on boots, CDR on the belt, which was usually the normal case of getting the cooldown lower. But this is, you get it to like a 1 point something seconds, so every 4th hit of Herald of Thunder. There is also the way of stacking cooldown recovery rate on Abyss Jewels. I'm not using it, I think this is way too expensive. And on top of that, it is not needed because we have 2 other factors that lower the cooldown. In one hand, it is the Balance of Terror, which gives you up to 25% increased cooldown recovery rate if you've cast Temporal Chains in the past second. So if you see here on my Fireburst, we have like a 0.8. Now I'm casting Temp Chains, and for the next 10 seconds, my cooldown is below 0.75. I'm gonna go over the breakpoints in a bit. But that means that my Herald of Thunder, like every 3rd Herald of Thunder hit, will actually enable or cast the Fireburst instead of every 6th, which would be the normal case for a 1.5 second cooldown. On top of that, we have here a beautiful cluster of tattoos. So basically, there are 3 spots that we can use here for 8% cooldown recovery rate. What we need to do is get 7 adjacent passive skills. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here on the bottom side, we have the same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And on top of that, since we're scaling this with minion damage, we can also take this Note Lord of the Dead, which also gives us 20% increased damage. And the 3rd one over here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The only problem is you need to skill Hexmaster. And here is the problem, Hexmaster is actually lowering our DPS because it says infinite curse duration, but less effectiveness of curses. And this will basically lower our damage because of a reduced effect of flammability and ally weakness. The way we do this, we take one single keystone tattoo and just get any other keystone as long as it doesn't break the build. Things that would break the build would, for example, be Chaos Inoculation, or I don't know if anything else would actually break the build. I don't think so. Maybe Zealot's Oath would not be the best thing, or like Ancestral Bond or something, right? But chances are very, very, very high. In the worst case scenario, you have to use like 2 tattoos. Just do not keep Hexmaster. I mean, you can use it for the budget option. It's just a bit of less damage, not a lot, but it's still less damage. To try to get anything else, I was lucky getting Mind of a Matter, which basically saves me 3 skill points. So that there's not really the issue over here. It would be different if I would have here a keystone that would be like Ally Equilibrium or something like that on the other side, right? So I have here Mind of a Matter, saved me a total of 3 skill points. Which is quite nice. But when we use the Warrior's Tail, all of those 3 are now doubled. So it means I'm getting 48% increased cooldown recovery rate of this specific tattoo setup. And thanks to a couple of mana reservation efficiency, I don't even have to use Enlightened support, which makes the build a lot cheaper. I think this build, my version, is kind of high investment because I wanted to get this build to do Uber bosses, which is kind of funny because an Autobomber that can do Uber bosses sounds kind of interesting for me, so I went like all in and tried to get the damage up. But after doing it on low version, on medium budget, and on high budget, I decided that it's somewhere on the low to medium budget where this build actually shines, and this is speed mapping. I did actually kill the Uber Eater of Worlds today, not Deathless, but something like Uber Exile is for me unbeatable, or at least like very hard to beat, because the Flame Barrage, I cannot face tank that. The Minotaur, while I'm doing the Flame Balls and stuff like that, you know, it's not a build that has like 100 million DPS or something like that, so I cannot like one-shot. So that's why I need to play the mechanics of the Uber bosses, and my build is tanky in terms of like mapping. I can click on all the altars, I can like speed farm, I can do guardians and all these, and normal bosses like Exarch, Eater of Worlds, Cortex, doesn't matter. But when we go to Uber bosses, there is like the tankiness lacking. In my current version, I'm running about a 16 or roughly 17 million DPS if I go for the bossing setup, which is basically, instead of like Onslaught and Quicksilver Flask, I would go for a Bottled Faith and a Cinder Swallow, and instead of the Barracks Respite for Ignite Proliferation, I'm taking a Replica Ember Wake. This is my single target setup, and without single target setup, I think I'm somewhere at like 12, 13, 14 million DPS Ignite, which is ridiculous when it comes to the mapping. So that's why I say I've tested this now on a low budget, and if you wonder how, the most of the time I was playing with this bow over here. So no stats on it, just like any socket colors, a stat stick for life resistance until I upgrade it to the staff versions. But before I go anything further into this like explanation how the build works, let's run 2 maps, my everyday Crimson Temple map and a Guardian map, so you see how much damage this is doing, or how is the clear in the mapping version. And don't you worry, there is no explodey items. I do currently use an explodey flask with Shaper of Fan the Flame, so the explosions can also proliferate. But I also tested this without the explodey and without Fan the Flames, just with Ignite Proliferation on my Fire Burst, because nothing else actually kills, and then basically skipping the Oriad's End, so there was no explosions, just Ignite Prolif and the Barracks Respite, and the clear was, I would say, about 90% the same. It was very hard to see the difference in the clearing aspect with the Explosive Flask and without. Obviously, if you want to run like 80% daily, 100% daily with this build, I think you're gonna notice the difference because monsters have a lot more life, but for your everyday mapping, it is absolutely no problem. The way I do this, I have here on my helm a trigger craft. That means all of these spells will get triggered with like a 0.25 seconds cooldown. It doesn't look really like that, so if I press focus over here, you're gonna see instantly 2 curses, the Flame Surge, and my brand on the floor. This is how I do this. Before I had this helmet, I was playing with the Gold Rim helmet, and there I just had Stonebrand as my activating skill. So what I do here, I run to the monsters, I press my focus, my Stonebrand goes off, I'm Elementalist to Shaper the Storms, Shaper of... will actually just give us this loop of shocking enemies and having like an endless, basically, Herald of Thunder, Fire Burst, a trigger. So I can, it's not necessary for mapping. That's why I say this can be run on like probably a divine budget. I should use my temporal chains to get it on every fourth, like every third Herald of Thunder tick. Now it is currently when I don't press it on every fourth. And as you see, bosses, I press one time my focus because of Ellie weakness, flammability and stuff like that. And then I basically just run around and see things just instantly explode and melt. And when there is like a pack or something, you know, they just disappear. And as I said, this works exactly the same with Ignite Proliferation and without exploding, without fan the flames. And it's just a beautiful of a mapper. All I need to do is hold down left click. I have here my facing. That means that I'm like quite faster. I'm harder to stealth, like I have like some stealth there, so I'm harder to get auto attacked and stuff like that. So all I need to do is just walk around. Herald of Thunder will hit an enemy, will trigger the fire burst, the Ignite Proliferation goes off, the explosions go off if you play with them. And for mapping, this is just the most relaxing thing that you can do. And as I said, I'm not even pressing any, temporal chains right now, means that my fire burst is currently on a 0.8 second cooldown. But as I said, the better way would be if I press temporal chains getting down to 0.7, so every third Herald of Thunder actually hits that thing. But as you see, map clearing, absolutely no problem. All I need to do is just loot the stuff. And even when there's monsters spawning from behind, you still have your Herald of Thunder automated to target those while you're looting. Let's do the Metamorph real quick. Just take the left side, so the Metamorph is extra juicy. I'm going to press here my Temp Chains. As soon as it spawns, I press my Focus, so the target is ignited and everything, and it is dead. So as I said, pretty sexy mapper, and I really enjoyed that. It really gives me some Ultimatum vibes when we go back to like Ultimatum, where Fire Burst was just that good. So let's do a Phoenix over here with extra totems, undead, poison, fizz, extra chaos, hinder, whatever. So now I want to show like the kind of like Guardian DPS that I have. The map showcase will still be the same. You know, Focus usually has 8 seconds cooldown, but since we're having, I think, like 113% cooldown recovery rate, our Focus only has like 3.76 seconds cooldown. So we go in, we press our Focus as soon as we are next to monster and start our chain loop with Herald of Thunder and Shaper of Storms. Fire Burst kills something, shocks it, Herald of Thunder goes off, Herald of Thunder just boom, you know, just go in, hit one enemy, and the thing is just exploding, and it is an endless chain reaction because Herald of Thunder usually has an 8 seconds buff, I think, or was it 7 seconds? As you see, it runs longer than 8 seconds because our Fire Burst shocks will basically just refresh our Herald of Thunder as soon as we run around and kill stuff. But one of the most chillest mappers that you can do these days, and I'm glad that I made it work, that we can like enjoy it for this league as well. So if Sanctum will stay, and if Sanctum will stay and tattoos, then this will be good. So what if tattoos will disappear? I think just with the 25 CDR we can make it work to get it low enough. So here, portal here, it's still a mapper. We go over here, we press one button, and then just see how the boss is actually melting, and it actually dies before the first shockwave. But I'm slightly overgeared for this, so as I said, I was playing this now on 3 different versions, which is low, medium, and high budget. And as I said, my gear is pretty good because I was trying to do Uber boss with it. The Uber Eater of Worlds is down. Took me 6 portals, doesn't matter. I killed an Uber boss with an Autobomber, but I wouldn't say this is an Uber boss farmer, like nowhere close. And do I need like 15 million Ignite DPS for mapping? No, I don't. I even ran this Phoenix now with my Barracks Respite and with my clearing setup instead of going with Replica Ember Wake that actually gives me another like 3, 4, 5 million DPS on top of that. So as I said, let's go back to the basics. How does this work? And then I'm gonna go over my gear, how I crafted it, and what I used before I swapped into the higher version. So basically, I'm gonna put away here my Explosive Flask and my my gloves, I think, because here I have Trigger Commandment of Light, so if monsters are hitting me, I'm just gonna like explode at some point and they will just die, which kind of sucks. But as I said, we have Fire Burst coming from the Essence of Hysteria and giving you the level 20 Fire Burst skill. This is just an on-hit thing, as I explained before. I don't need to use something. I can just use here my default attack on W, and I hope that I don't get stunned here when I'll try to attack one of these monsters. And now Fire Burst goes off, and now we have like this, not really loop because I don't have Herald of Thunder now, but you see, I hit one time, Fire Burst goes off, and boom, we have the explosions ready. What about the, so we talked about actually the how do we scale the damage. As I said, a new take on it. We're stacking Abyssals with flat lightning damage to spells, as well as scaling minion damage to get the damage higher than before. So one thing to note here, first of all, why do I think this is actually League Start viable? Because you don't need a 6-link. This is Fire Burst is a skill that is now on your weapon. That means we can use 6 support gems to support it, having an actual 7-link without the need of linking that. That's why I have no links on my staff. So just to showcase that it doesn't have to be linked. It's a misconception because a lot of people are linking their stuff with, without actually any use case. Good, the next thing is, as I said, you don't need any 6-link, and the skill that you use comes from an essence. That's why it is actually League Start viable. The rest of the gear is basically your typical Ignite stuff, life resistance, fire dot multi, damage over time multi, whatever you need. Good, we talked about, as I said, the offense. Now I want to talk about the defense. So this build as a witch, it is very hard to scale your defense. There is like no armor, no mitigation, no nothing like that. Because, as I said, it is rough to get a witch going with like spell suppression and scaling a good amount of evasion and armor. Like even if you go with determination, what I could do over here, the problem is more like everything below like a 20,000-30,000 armor is almost useless. So the way I try to mitigate physical hits is basically with things like a physical damage taken as chaos damage. Then there is like, I think, other nodes that do almost the same. I have here my helmet with physical damage taken as fire damage. We could use a Taste of Hate just to get this like damage mitigation going rather than the damage. It's not an EK build, it's not a physical spell, it is a fire spell. So that will be one way to do it. The next thing is I can sustain almost everything in the game as long as I don't get one shot. So my goal here is to not get one shot. The way I do this in this version is with the Progenesis, and I did play this with Petrified Blood, and that will be the cheaper version, but that would actually require an Enlighten to use, so I wouldn't really call it cheaper. But we don't really have any gains for having low life, so Pain Attunement doesn't work with Ignites, because before I played Petrified Blood, I was in low life, and I did have not Pain Attunement, but there is like no gain. But between being low life with Petrified Blood, you're still tankier without Petrified Blood. It's very like almost the same one-shot protection as being like full life or half-life with Petrified Blood, but as long as we don't have any use case out of Petrified Blood, there is no point of doing that. So the other way is, for example, a Progenesis Flask that splits 25% of the damage, but what I also did is taking Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery, because Mind Over Matter basically gives you 40% of damage taken before mana. That means if I get 1,000 hit, there is 400 damage going to mana and only 600 on our life, and that gets further split with, for example, Petrified Blood or Progenesis or both and so on. So the goal is to not get one shot, because recovery wise I decided to use the new amulet, which is the Defiance of Destiny. And what this amulet is doing, gain up to 42% of missing unreserved life before being hit by an enemy. So what that does, if I'm gonna showcase this in like the written form here, let's assume we have, let's say 3,000 life, right? I get hit by 1.5 thousand damage, means I'm getting down to 1,500 life. This is basically the core thingy. You have 3k life, you get hit by 1,500, and you're now 1,500, right? In this case, the amulet is not doing anything, because it says of missing unreserved life. So let's take a look at the next hit, okay? We're doing the exact same thing. We now have 1,500 life out of 3,000. Means we get another 1,500 hit. We have on 0 life, and we are basically dead. What the amulet now is doing, we have 1,500 life. We get 1,500 damage, but before we get that, 42% of our missing life, unreserved missing life, is getting healed before the hit. That means I have now 1,500 life. I would get 1,500 damage, but before this happens, the amulet says, you know what, 0.42 of your missing life is 630 plus 1,500 of my base life here. So we are basically healed for 630. Means we are now on 130 life of 3,000 before the hit. Then we get hit by 1,500. Means we're down to our 630 life basically after, and we are alive. means that this amulet just saved my ass when it comes to this. Now we take it another step further. Now we are on 630 life or 3000. I don't want to make this too complicated, but now before I get the hit, I would now have healed for the remaining life, which is my basically 3000 minus 630 of my current life pool, means I'm missing 3000 minus 630. I'm currently missing 2370 lives, so we take this times 0.42 and I get healed for another 995 damage, which means plus 630 of my base life, means I would survive another 1500 hit, even though my life pool was currently on 630. So I think for a character that doesn't have a lot of defense, as long as you're not gonna get one-shotted, this amulet should actually be able to heal you back up. And this is always based on your current life rather than the life that the enemy, or the damage that the enemy is doing, basically. So I'm gonna activate my auras here. I actually hope that I'm not gonna instantly kill something. I wanna get hit a couple times so you see how this looks like. Yeah, I think, I mean, probably, let me put off Herald of Thunder. So basically I'm now getting hit, and as you see, every time I get hit, I'm restoring life. This is a bit of a weird showcase because I still do have, this was like Commandment of Light here, I still using Recoup to help with that. But as I said, as long as you're not getting one-shotted, you're gonna get your health back up, and you won't gonna survive all these small little hits. Another way of what I was just referring to, I'm currently trying out 9 lives. So basically, Recoup, everybody knows Recoup, or should know, means you get damage, and over 4 seconds, you gain a percentage of that life recovered, basically, or Recoup, better said. In this cluster, they're 30%, but this is just life Recoup. And at the moment, I'm trying out here the Forbidden Flame Flash for 9 lives. So what is 9 lives? Basically, it is the Witch special Forbidden Flame Flash, which says 25% of damage taken recouped as life, mana, and energy shield. And this over 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds. If you do not have those because they're rather expensive, you just take the life mastery and your life recoup effects and like occur over 3 seconds instead of 4. But if you have the 9 lives, the good thing is now we're recouping energy shield on top of that. And since we're Mind Over Matter, and since we're using Eldritch Battery, can restore both life and energy shield at the same time. So that gives me like a very, very, very good sustain, and I can even like just stand in the beam of an Eater of Worlds and just soak that one up, basically, because if I don't die one shot, I'm gonna recoup everything back. And at the moment, I'm running like 55% recoup. So that like easily sustains me through like almost every damage. On top of that, I'm running regeneration. I'm running leech from the Doriani's lesson, so elemental damage, leech does life. And we have like recoup, and we have recovery from our amulet. So there is like a lot of like layers of like sustaining and getting life back. As I say, don't get one-shotted. And obviously, once you do Uber bosses, I even like surviving auto attacks of an Uber Searing Exile, but as I said, the Minotaur, the flame balls, at least like the flame balls and so on, is kind of like not that sexy with this build. So as I said, I would give this a solid, I would say a 7 out of 10 overall as a build. It is fast, it has amazing clear speed, it works on a budget. You can scale it quite high. You can even reach Ignite cap on this character if you go the more Glass Cannon way, skipping this Forbidden Flame Flash, and you just stack more and more of these Abyss Jewels. Oh, by the way, since I'm using a lot of tattoos, the thing is, you know, face run and like cast damage taken with this immense cooldown recovery rate is also very good because it has a very low cooldown. The thing is, stats are horrible as a witch, you know? Strength, dexterity is always garbage. If you ever played EK Ignite, you probably know exactly what I was talking about. So, how do I solve this? I decided to go with Supreme Ostentation, coming from an Elegant Hubris, Commemorate by Caspiro. Gives us this keystone. Since we're here anyways, I checked all the modifiers for what comes with the Elegant Hubris, and I found 2 to be better than the others. One would be Frenzy Charge and Hit, Frenzy Charge sustain, our Herald of Thunder hits quite often, and minion damage. And the Spiritual 8 is right there, so you can either like skill that or anoint it, whatever you prefer. If you decide to skill it, you can anoint something like Dirty Techniques for 15% faster ignites on top of that. So as I said, here would be a Mana Mastery as well, where we could take 12% Mana Reservation Efficiency, as well as over here. So everything here can be used. But as I said, I'm using a lot of Tattoo. I got 100% reduced extra damage from critical strikes. Here I got a bunch of like Mana Reservation Efficiency, because they get buffed even from the Warrior's Tail. And the rest, I decided to get some Chaos Resistance. If you want more damage, you can take the Flat Lightning damage. If you don't, for example, I'm running 50% critical damage reduction on my chest. I don't think this chest will be ever available. I think that was the only one on the market. So you would take those other nodes where I just currently have Chaos Res. You would take those to take more extra damage from reduced critical strikes. So we are crit immune on that build as well. So a combination, Chaos Res, Mana Reservation Efficiency, crit damage reduction, and those are basically the tattoos that I'm running over here. You can also get a bunch of like Mana Reservation Efficiency here as well, based on your level. I'm currently level 95, and the good thing is we don't need any stats. It just simply gets ignored, so whatever we use, even a high level face run here with 153 dex requirement, is absolutely no problem. First lap is always going to be Shaper of Flames, then I would go for Shaper of Storms to get our trigger going with the Herald of Thunder, and afterwards is Mastermind and Heart of Destruction. Make sure to have a form of fire exposure on your gloves implicit. Or there's even, I think, like a Balance of Terror, so you would need to try to get like cooldown recovery rate plus flammability or something, right? Good. One thing I want to explain real quick is about the cooldown and the hit rate. And I'm going to write this down. Herald of Thunder has a 0.5 seconds hit rate. That means every 0.25 Herald of Thunder has a hit, right? So 1, then we have 125 and 150. So then Fire Burst has a cooldown of 1.5 seconds. That means we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That means every 6th attack basically is hitting, every 6th Herald of Thunder tick is Fire Burst. So now this is very important to understand based on your budget, okay? If you can get Balance of Terror and so on, and my current version has Fire Burst on, if I put back here Temporal Chains, my Fire Burst is on a 0.7. So it is roughly here, right? 0.7. So it means every 3rd Herald of Thunder hit will actually enable that. If you don't have it, so this is the thing that I want you to understand. If your cooldown recovery rate or the cooldown of Fire Burst is somewhere between this range, the 0.99 and 0.76, this is exactly between here, right? This is our example here. It does not matter if you have a 0.98 or a 0.76. 0.76 is more investment, is more cooldown recovery rate, but you get absolutely no benefits out of it because it will still wait until the next Herald of Thunder hit. Only if you can get it below the next threshold of Herald of Thunder's hit rate, then it is worth using that. Even if I go CDR Abyss Jewels, I think I get it down to 0.6, which is still higher than the next tick rate, so I skip that completely because there is absolutely no point. Alright guys, I hope you enjoy this kind of like fun mapper, Fire Burst back on the menu, thanks to Forbidden Sanctum and thanks to the tattoos. So if you want to enjoy this kind of like speed mapper, go ahead, feel free to do so. I definitely recommend that. I would just not recommend the high investment that I've done because I plan to do Uber bosses. I only beat one Uber boss. And I also died on the last floor on the Uber boss of Sanctum, which is kind of sad, because I just randomly got one-shotted by the waves. So it's not a build that just goes in and insta one-shots everything. So it is a dot build. Monsters will live longer like bosses. And therefore, I think for the real endgame content, the build would be too squishy without armor, without a proper mitigation. But when it comes to like speed mapping, tier 16, corrupted maps, 80% daily farming should absolutely be no problem on this build, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna enjoy this one as much as I did. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.